You good? All right, welcome to the Seneca County IDA meeting of January 10th, 2025. We have a quorum. We also have a guest here. We'll get to that here shortly. Let's start with the approval of the meeting minutes of May 13th. Everyone has a copy in front of them. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of May 13th?
So moved.
Second.
There's a second from Ben. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a presentation by former Senator Mike Nozzolio on the subject of locating Finger Lakes. Mike, are you ready to have the floor?
Mr. Chairman, if you give me the floor, I'll take the floor.
It's yours. It's yours.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. If you suffer some brief history, I'd like to talk to you about a couple of things. First, the role that I've had with the IDA over the last 40 years. The establishment of two not-for-profit organizations that I established since retiring from the state senate, and talk to you about general economic development issues, if that's allowed.
Yes.
First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for being involved in economic development issues in this county. I was born and raised in Seneca Falls, educated close by at Cornell and Syracuse University, and this has always been my home and always will be my home. And I thank you as a neighbor for being involved in getting career opportunities for people so that they can enjoy this beautiful region and have a lifestyle as well as a career in this beautiful place. Bruce is so right that there's so many frustrations with economic development. One of the books I read on economic development many years ago was about, it was from a professor at Carnegie Mellon, who was saying that tax incentives are important, regulatory reform is important. However, the most important reason why people come to an area and bring jobs to a region is the livability of a community, what it has to offer, what kinds of things it can present, what type of lifestyle will occur. And that's critical to bringing employees to recruit to the region. And I thank you for being involved in what is often a thankless job, an unseen job, but nonetheless extremely important.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good morning. This is
How are you?
lady stopped by, suffered with me for 40 years as an assistant. My right hand, and is headed up as our chief of staff as I served in the state senate. To those of you who don't know me, I was representative of this region in the state assembly and state senate for 34 years. It was a labor of love. One of the labors that I got involved with was involvement with the IDA. Many of you may remember Bill Cram. Certainly you know his dealership, legacy of his children and grandchildren just down the road. Bill Cram was former chair, like as Bruce is now. Bill was chair of the Seneca County IDA for many years. And he came to me one day when I was in the state assembly and said, you know, we don't have an executive director. We never had one. The county board wouldn't appropriate the money way back then for even a minor amount of money for an executive director. Can you get us a grant? Well, a long story longer, I went and got the grant, and Bill was able to hire the very first director. Bob, I don't know if you were, I think it's probably even predated you, but it nonetheless is how I got involved with the IDA. In 1995 was a great year for us in the sense that, yes, we had the majority in the state senate. I was a majority member, Republican member of the state senate. we also elected one of my best friends to be governor, and that was George Pataki. And one of the first challenges we had at the end of 1994 and beginning of 1995 was Gould's Pumps. For the first time, Gould's Pumps, which was a great company, one established over 100 years ago, was decided to test the waters and move from New York State. They had land in Virginia, they were ready to go. They had a new president who had no ties to this region whatsoever, and that it was a very significant challenge that the IDA was confronted with. The IDA might have had an executive director at that time, but they didn't have a typewriter. They didn't have a way that they could produce a proposal to the state, and I asked, we're part of a task force, I got involved with a group locally, Barry Bradshaw, the late Barry Bradshaw, a wonderful guy who's involved in community matters in Seneca Falls, wanted to keep Gould's here. Long story longer, it was the first time that we were able to provide economic incentives to Gould's Pumps, and they basically changed their mind after those incentives were provided. And the governor played a key role in doing that. 10 years later, we had to do the same thing with Gould's again, and 10 years after that. The last time was a good time in the sense that they brought and consolidated some of their work in other ITT, consolidated some of their other work that was done in Pennsylvania in particular, and brought it to here. I haven't heard lately about Gould's, but I'm sure it's getting right for them to if they haven't already.
We just did a sales tax package for them last month.
It's a once in a decade life experience. It is a perennial that comes up every 10 years. But nonetheless, we need to keep them here. The largest number of direct manufacturing jobs is something that I'm glad the IDA continues to be a partner with them to keep them here. That I commend you for being involved. I also commend you for leadership you've exhibited on the Willard situation. Willard was, if you can imagine, 3,000 patients there at one time when it was a mental hospital. That they had over 1,000, well over 1,000 employees. That I tried to keep them open for the longest time, but deinstitutionalization required that that modality of service was not going to be accepted anymore. It was a question of groups homes, not an institution. So rather than continue to fight a losing battle, I convinced the governor at the time, Pataki, to create a minimum medium security facility, prison facility, that would focus on the mission of Willard, which is to help those that are disturbed, and in many cases criminals who have an alcohol or drug dependency and commit crimes because of that dependency, would be the candidates for this prison. The governor agreed, we established the prison, and that's how Willard was formed. It was, I forget the exact year, probably 1996 at the latest, that it was put forward. It was a model of its kind, a first of its kind certainly in New York, and one of the first of its kind in the nation that just focused on drug and alcohol rehabilitation.
So that's why the Van Dyke Center was also put there? Because of that drug and alcohol component?
Dick Van Dyke predated the prison, but it was a big reason why we were able to advocate to establish the type of prison there, with that cadre of support from those who, caregivers from Dick Van Dyke, to be involved in that. I'd like to say something about, and you're very, very wise, I started this by in talking about Willard, you're wise to do the study, congratulations for doing that, to analyze what potentially the uses could be. I'm very disappointed in Albany today, because they had a commitment, and we established that commitment. under Governor Andrew Cuomo, when a prison was closed, that there would be a support for the community that had been the host of that prison. And that there was a fund, a considerable amount of money, multi-millions of dollars, to communities that had prison closures, that we believed would be the way that you could at least, all right, if the prison was no longer needed, although we could debate that all day. But the fact is that if the governor decides that the prison needs to be closed, that in effect, there should be a community source of funding to reuse that facility. And I hope that, if anything, that we could help stimulate that discussion, because this Willard is proof positive of a community. I mean, between Wireless and Ovid, those communities were the gracious hosts of these facilities. In many ways, economic development was stifled in some ways because of those facilities, in some ways, in that community. But nonetheless, there should be a transition period where the state says, yes, here's some support. And I would hope that that issue could be discussed in further detail and hopefully see something resolved with that. But nonetheless, you've taken the bull by the horns. You've got the study started. Bruce has been so involved in this job, but also this volunteer position, but also giving guidance to the group in Ovid. I was invited by a longtime friend, supporter, Dave Eastman, who is a pillar in the Ovid community, been involved in community matters for years. He and his daughter, Ellen, it was a businesswoman in Ovid, asked me to get engaged, and yes, I think that they're establishing a structure. Bruce has given them great guidance in terms of action items that are necessary, and I think it's exciting. Bruce, I don't know if you feel this way. I feel actually motivated and excited by the fact that there are people who are now thinking of economic development in the South End. We haven't had that type of support and group of volunteers, and maybe if there's any good that came about after the fire, it's certainly that.
But one of the things I think is kind of like trying to tackle and solve the redevelopment of that one block is kind of step one toward the bigger picture, which is Willard. And so if the process can be honed and figured out in getting a plan, soliciting developers, grinding through the economic incentives to get them to do what everybody wants them to do, coming to the IDA and saying, all right, what can you do? Coming possibly to the state and saying, what can you do? Between the three of those, I'm pretty confident we can get that Ovid block rebuilt, but it's gonna take, 2 or 3 years, I think, realistically. And Willard, 8 to 12, probably, in that case.
And I think, though, there'll be a decade-long impact if that's done correctly. And forget who asked the question, but there are 20,000 cars a day that go by that Four Corners. And to get them to stop, to spend money, I mean, the fast track is great. When there was a McDonald's that was part of that fast track, it was developed because the prison was there. That's why fast track got developed, because of the maximum security facility we were able to locate at the Seneca Army Depot, the south end of the Seneca Depot, which does provide 800 jobs to the area. Pivoting to locate Finger Lakes. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, sir.
Jeff's been one of the good supporters of Locate Finger Lakes, and we're just moving into this discussion, Jeff, about what Locate Finger Lakes is and what it can be, and what we'd like your support on. That Locate Finger Lakes was established for the very reasons we were talking earlier about economic development. The the incentives that an IDA can provide is sort of the beginning of the last part of the story. The first part of the story is why would somebody locate a business or decide to grow their career in this region? That is a decision that is made by thousands of people in thousands of different ways. But I had a great friend who was a very successful businessman in Auburn. He made the Red Star Express trucking line what it is today. He inherited a small truck from his father and turned it into a multi-million-dollar business, he and his brother. They set up a foundation, and he wanted me to get involved in trying to get the message out beyond, and with all due respect to what the Finger Lakes is being noted for, which is great. It's being noted for its great wines and the winery involvement. We also wanted to let people know that, yes, this is a beautiful place. It has a great aesthetic in terms of the wineries, but there are also many career opportunities here. And that those career opportunities, our objective was to get them onto the web and have people see that, well, maybe it is a good idea to locate in the Finger Lakes. If you're visiting here, if you're recreating here, if you're having your vacation here, you always wonder, well, what is this place like? And that's why we created Locate Finger Lakes. It's a not-for-profit. We made a conscious decision not to be in the market to raise money to compete with the chamber, not just here, but the 7-8 county region that the 11 Finger Lakes are in. That we wanted to get information about businesses in our region that were unique, provided career opportunities, and in fact were opportunities for your children, your grandchildren, to come here and work and make a living. We focused on a number of businesses that are legacy businesses, new businesses. Just to give examples, in Seneca County, certainly Jane Sessler and Jane Sessler Schaefer and that a great business started by Jane's dad with Craig and Vern and Chris Schaefer involved. That was one of our initial profiles. We profiled Waterloo Container, profiled a lot of other companies across the region. Rather than try to point these things out on a computer for you now, what I'm going to do is just ask you to take a look at the website, www.locatefingerlakes.com. And it is, if you navigate to the website, one of the first things we've done is put maps of where the lakes are, maps and dots where you can click on that dot and find the Seneca County IDA. And the other IDAs and economic development offices within this 11-lake region. Our focus, though, is basically between Rochester and Syracuse. There's a lot of talk about Rochester, a lot of talk about Syracuse. It's great economic development, and we will benefit by that. But we also wanted the focus to be places that were ignored. Places like Auburn and Seneca Falls and Waterloo and Ovid. Did a beautiful, what I like to think is a beautiful story because of the beautiful subject about how a fellow from California decided to come to this region and build a business, and that's why Bruce Murray is sitting here. About Tom, your business with what is a very classy Miranda cheese, and doing that business. We tried. It was unique. It had multi-generational, and it was something that certainly was a great contributor and enhancement to the economy and to the character of the region. That we're going to be doing, talking to Judge Brunell coming in the door. We just finished a draft of a business. It's not a business. It's a factor that I enacted legislation to create the Seneca County Land Bank. number of years ago, and if you held a gun to my head and said, explain all the things the land bank does, I couldn't. I couldn't even give you 2 or 3. But the fact of the matter is, Sarah suggested to do the land bank as a story, so it would educate, and that's going to be one of our stories coming up. It's free. We circulate to a wide variety of emails and social media, and hopefully we'll be able to continue that. Joan and I are volunteers on it. We have a writer who does a great job, and she is continuing in that pursuit, and she's not a volunteer, but Kathy is a great writer, and we're going to continue to use her. And this is, I would love you to take a look at locatefingerlakes.com. Take just a few minutes to do so. But we've been partners in a lot of different endeavors, and would like to continue to promote the region. Just 2 more things I want to mention. Bruce is involved with this as well. Joan is an officer. I've set up a not-for-profit, or expanded a not-for-profit, called the Friends of the Finger Lakes Veterans Cemetery, New York State Veterans Cemetery. Friends of the New York State Veterans Cemetery Finger Lakes is the name of the not-for-profit. I'm going to leave you with brochures about what we're doing. If it weren't for the IDA, it wasn't for the IDA, we've had a tremendously more difficult time in development of the cemetery. Those of you who are new to the IDA board, those of you who are not, may recall that we needed, it was a field of dreams in the sense that if we built it, people would understand its value. And the Seneca County Board at the time didn't want to be engaged in that, although they've been very supportive through the years. But the IDA took title to the properties that we had to pass special legislation to get the southern portion of the Sampson property deeded to some entity. And the not-for-profit was not strong enough in a sense to have that. We needed a governmental entity. Thank God for the IDA. It was wonderful. They established this. I don't know if you've been there lately. I spoke at the Memorial Day service this year. It's just a beautiful place. There are over 1,500 who are interned there. There's room for another almost 100,000 grave sites. It is in perpetuity. It's one of the only things that is in perpetuity, other than maybe Gould's asking for economic incentives every 10 years. But hopefully that'll be in perpetuity. But the fact of the matter is this is in perpetuity. And we're raising money. We were able to establish the cemetery. The state government, New York state government, finally decided after years of delay, decades of delay, to join the National Federal Cemetery System, the National Veterans Cemetery System. And by joining it, they chose their first New York State Veterans Cemetery. A state like Maryland has 6 state-run veteran cemeteries. They're state-run and managed, however, they're supported by the federal government financially. New York was 48 states had established it. New York's the 49th state to establish the veteran cemetery system. And because of our work, many hard workers, the Sampson Veteran Cemetery was chosen as the very first New York State Veteran Cemetery. And I thank the IDA for all the support it gave us in the past. I'd certainly, why we're raising money, if you drive by 96A, the entrance gate is in a bleak, and you might miss it. Matter of fact, people told me they missed it a number of times. So our focus is to raise funds to establish a new entranceway. But take a look at the brochure and also look at our video, because the video is on our website, and the video, I think, it tells the story better than I can ever tell it. But we're raising money because the state pays, the federal government through the state pays for the general maintenance and operations. But they don't pay for monuments, they don't pay for something. And I just want to close by saying, a few months ago I visited Arlington National Cemetery. I worked in Washington for 4 years before I became a state legislator. Been to Arlington many times, but I hadn't been there in a while. I went and visited especially just to see Arlington. And Arlington is such a place of honor, and it's so beautiful, and you just feel so moved by being on those grounds. But our cemetery is the Arlington of New York State, and there's a big difference. The beauty of that land and that site is unparalleled. We're on the eastern shore of Seneca Lake. You see the sunsets. It is just a beautiful place. And Bruce is a volunteer on our board, and I thank you, Bruce, for that work as well. And measure. By the way, we did change the website. We got the button on there for your suggestion, and thank you. Take a tour. Thank you for doing it. People don't go to Arlington to be tourists, but the fact is there will be an economic benefit to this region, because every Memorial Day, every Veterans Day, and every day that Wreaths Across America is established, there are hundreds of people from across the state, many different areas of the state, who come to the region and spend money while they're here, but to visit their loved ones who are interred here. So I think there will be that economic benefit, and we believe it's worth making it the best type of memorial we possibly can. Sarah, I'd be glad to entertain any questions, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before everyone today.
Of course, thank you so much for taking the time. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. So one of the challenges we found after doing the study of the Willard campus, the highest and best use study, one of the next step was to go out and solicit interest from developers to come in and begin developing it. And that's kind of different that's kind of different task. You're out, you got to sell it basically. And you've been a very big advocate for the county, and that's what Locate Finger Lakes does. We weren't successful in getting people to locate Willard, actually, at Willard. You're not shy about promoting this area, which has been why you have a long list of accomplishments. How do we sell these places better? How do we do a better job selling this, Mike, is what really my concern is. Because there must be objections. If you're not close to for big industry, you need to be close to the thruway. There's a little bit of resistance sometimes to the landfill, I think. It's there, it's not going away. If there are objections to locating here, what are they and how do we overcome them?
Let's take that at a number of different levels.
Sure.
A very profound question. I'm doing, as a volunteer through Locate, assisting Sarah's counterpart in Cuba County. It's faced with a similar type of situation with the closure of Wells College. I don't know if you know where Wells is. It's in the village of Aurora, and it's a major institution, been there over 100 plus years, many years. And it's a similar type of situation in Willard is facing.
Yep.
Looking at it not from the livability, the loveliness, the fact we don't have huge traffic jams, the fact real estate is relatively inexpensive compared to the cities. All those areas, we can promote it. But why would a developer come to do this, to take on the assignment at Willard or the assignment at Wells? From the developer's perspective, if you bite off too much, you're gonna choke to death.
They're both big bites, they're both big bites.
They're well, in total, yes, they're huge bucks. I was involved very much we were in office less than a month, and Governor Mario Cuomo, put in his budget to create a medium security prison at Eisenhower College. And if you remember where Eisenhower College is, we're now the New York, the Health and
Institute.
whatever the new
Northeast
name is.
College.
Northeast, right, Northeast, that was almost a 8-year slug in terms of getting a developer. We found a developer, but then it was one of those that was not necessarily had staying power. And these developers, when they'll catch pneumonia when the rest of the economy gets a cold. Interest rates go up. There'll be a lot of reasons why developers can't fund a project. And just on this, Bruce, part of this is that to get one developer to do the whole thing is really asking a lot. And if you find one, fine. We were fortunate to find, thanks to Doc Paget, the New York Chiropractic College came lock, stock, and barrel. But that's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
And so how can you segment it so that there are ways to get developers, and the IDA could be the master developer in a sense, but having contractors in a subway to do that, and segmenting it may enhance its attractiveness.
We hear a lot about making it shovel ready so that the developer, right, one of the reasons the sales effort was not successful is there was a lot of make ready. You have to tear a lot of buildings down, you have to reinstall enough utility infrastructure to replace steam, heating for all that facility. There's sewer there, there's electric there, but there's not the full infrastructural package. Would it ever make sense for the county or some entity to come in and basically make it shovel ready and make it like the barrier to entry would not be so great for a developer?
Again, developers
Like that. They want us to spend our money.
exactly,
Yeah.
and they like it. To get a master developer though, that has its pitfalls. The fact is, will they actually do the development? Will they actually do that work? And it's not like.
Well, we were not successful.
Yeah.
That's the offer we were making here. You figure it out, is what we were saying
Yeah.
to that master developer.
And they tried that with the depot. It didn't work.
Same thing.
The same thing, and it's not working on the other side of the lake at this point.
So, don't we have to still go back to figure out who actually has ownership of that property and who can make the decisions on who can develop and who not without having to go back and asking for permission?
What we understand right now is that the county has proposed to take it over and with a plan, a very comprehensive, here's what we're gonna do with it. And after multiple rounds of saying, here's what we want to do, what's come back from the state is, we like it, but can you massage this part over here? And then after massaging this part over here, resubmitting it to the state, and then saying, okay, I got it, that makes sense, but then there's this part over here. So there's something appears to be holding up the transfer. And the two things we've heard is, one, the state and this is all rumor, pure rumor, 50% reliability. The state doesn't want to transfer it without knowing that the county has the wherewithal, the resources to maintain it and actually to follow through on a development plan, which kind of rings true to what you said earlier.
Right.
But no one's ready to cough that money up. The other option is that there may be some other deal going on somewhere in the background that we don't know about, and it might be a big one, and the state's cutting a good deal, you hope, but we just don't know.
The state has tremendous excess capacity. I mean, there are more than a dozen prisons that have been closed in recent years,
Right.
and very few of them have been redeveloped.
Yeah.
And that is, it's on their books, but they don't care because they don't pay the tax.
Mhm.
You know, and that they don't really have cost of care.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, but it's not an overly burdensome problem for them. So, would they be a great partner? I don't want to discount the fact they could be, but it's a little difficult for them to wrap their arms around a massive redevelopment unless you've got a specific developer.
So Mike,
It would be in Cuba County, the development of wells would be the number one project, just as Willard would be.
It seems like Wells would be an easier project than Willard.
So far, it hasn't been.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
There's a lot of small private colleges that have gone out. So Casanova College, but that got kind of closed out, which is good for apartments or something.
There's a lot of, just as in Willard, there's a lot of deferred maintenance
Right.
in the wells, dormitories and other buildings. There are buildings, health center, the golf course has already been sold.
Yeah.
So there have been things that have been segmented off. But the trustees are saying basically they would like to have one
One buyer.
buyer. And I don't know how realistic that is in this day and age.
so Mike, I'm just hearing you say, if we could segment Willard down and kind of look at the model that they did with Sessler's at the marina, where a state-private business partnership and development of segmented pieces of property on Willard might be more of an appetite for the state to be a partner with,
Yes.
rather than giving up total control or trying to figure out who has control on that?
Well, remember, Tom, they did that at a park,
Yeah,
which the state is going to own in perpetuity.
right.
I don't think they want to own Willard in perpetuity unless you create something,
But isn't that renegotiable after their lease is up, basically?
which lease?
On Sampson, of what Sessler's did down there? Can't they re-up for that?
Yeah, I'm sure that's not in perpetuity.
Right,
The park is in perpetuity.
right,
The land isn't, that's never going away.
right,
So the state says, okay, we'll get another vendor if necessary.
right.
Just as they would, but Willard's so different.
yeah.
You really want a developer to come in, maybe housing. It's been a while since I looked at the study. What did the study indicate?
So it carved the site into 7 regions. On the waterfront, there were 2. There was a public access portion to the waterfront, and then there was a conference center, waterfront, resort, hotel, destination facility. And then as you move up the hill to the east from the lake, there was there were 2 pieces. There was a residential commercial development on the south side facing the existing village of Willard, which would turn that main street down to the lake into more of a main street. And now it's half a main street. What the thought was, create the idea of a village center there, made sense. Then as you come further up the hill was single and multiple unit housing. A little bit to the south where there is a warehouse, the food service delivery that was light industrial. So there's a lot of It's not on the waterfront, it's away from the houses, maybe some kind of light industrial. And then as you cross the road, go up the hill to where the large historical, what's called Grand View is the building, they really said, anybody's guess. They really didn't have a specific purpose to it. The thought was the waterfront was the easiest sell, and nobody bid, at least so far. But there is a plan there, and part of the plan that the county has submitted to the state is to do just as you said, is to parcel it out roughly along those same lines, and then tackle each one separately. One theory is that if it were possible to get a tenant or developer that was a kind of marquee first mover, then the state could declare victory by saying, look what we've done, we're passing this piece of it over to this marquee. Haven't we done the right thing here? Good thing that we have. Now it's yours. So getting that first developer in could break the logjam right now, giving the state at least a public relations victory.
Mhm. And that makes all the sense to me. If you recall, the depot properties extended onto the lakefront with the officers' housing, the former officers' housing that, I forget the name of the road, but it about halfway, 3/4 of the way down 96A. south
Kennedy.
of it, if you remember.
Kennedy Road,
Yeah, that. would-
Yeah, that's where you are.
yeah.
You
Or our
need that in
process,
town?
no, that's where our processing plan is,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
So the officers' quarters were, that land was,
right down there on the left.
yep, and changed to, obviously changed to
Private,
housing.
yeah.
A lot of new housing was built there.
Yeah.
That was with Aspen, right?
What's that, Bob?
That was Aspen that took on that project.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. And so maybe that's sort of the key, the model that was able to get them
Mhm.
where they are. Just a word about the depot. I just want to thank Sarah for, and this is another hat that I'm wearing. I was talking to the judge, I said, as we were walking in, I said, I've succeeded in flunking retirement because I'm still involved in working and as volunteer and as of counsel to my law firm. And the firm is representing a company that's putting solar into Waterloo and solar hopefully into the depot. One of the big, and it gets back to some of the things we were discussing earlier about infrastructure. A big problem, and we bet Sarah's ear on this a lot, a big problem is getting whatever's generated there in terms of energy, electricity, and getting it out into transmission. I got to tell you that we really, I've been frustrated because when we built the prison, got a call one day and they said, well, the construction's great, but we have no natural gas. We had to get natural gas to the prison. And I suggested the abandoned railroad bed that basically extended south from Geneva that was right through a lot of farmers' fields.
Mhm.
And the Farm Bureau was deadly against it being a bike trail because the last thing you need to do is have heavy equipment running around when you got bikes and hikers and things like that. So NYSEG basically got that easement from Geneva to the depot with basically for pennies. And NYSEG then thought, okay, then let's use that same easement to get transmission. And the company I represent has been talking with NYSEG for 4 years. And they're doing the talking, and I'd say doesn't seem to be doing the listening. So they've been frustrating, just in terms of getting, and that's an impediment to all the county in terms of, in the Central Finger Lakes, not just Seneca County, but the counties that represent the Central Finger Lakes, very, very difficult. That certainly Locate is trying to promote everything, and Bruce, I don't know what type of promotion and budget, certainly we should, if you'd like, Sarah, think about it, if it would be helpful to do some type of profile on the efforts to redevelop Willard.
Yeah.
We would do a story on that and publish it through Locate, and maybe even get one of our great supporters and partners, Finger Lakes Times, they may print it too. So we'd be glad to do the in-depth research necessary to put the word of Seneca County's idea on that proposal. But do you think that, not to be critical, you probably got it out to every developer in the area already. But what about this story do they not understand? Or what about the messaging would you like to maybe emphasize in an online story?
Well, I think that the reason they didn't show much interest was it just wasn't ready. It was not in a condition that any one master developer was ready to take on. I think probably if we can, I think the best off the top of my head to say there is a plan in place, it would mirror the proposal that the county has put forth to the state, which is to create several different development zones and then go and seek developers to take on the development of each of those zones. The planning department at the county, Jill Henry and Joe McGrath, have done a really good job. I mean, it's thorough. If nothing else, it is really thorough. They've found the boundaries. They know exactly where the line is, and it's I don't know if it's a story that the county is seeking to take it on. I don't know if that's enough of a story, but there's certainly enough material in what they've proposed to write a fair piece.
I'd be glad to look at it
Okay.
and work with Sarah on the kind of messaging you would like to see in terms of that.
I mean, it'd be like a county plan for, yeah, we can do something.
That supplements. Sarah, has New York State Empire State Development been had any hands-on this yet?
Yeah, I mean, the facility is still owned by the Department of Corrections, but the lead agency working with the county is Empire State Development, their real estate team. So they actually have someone on their real estate team is headquartered in New York City, but they have somebody on that team that is stationed out of the Rochester Finger Lakes
On the
regional office.
for corrections properties?
Yes.
Right.
So she's been working on Butler and Livingston and Willard. We're kind of, those other ones are moving forward now. It's just a matter of getting title to Willard. That's the sticking point. So we didn't find a master developer. There are developers, and there are some that have, at least in a general sense, expressed interest in Willard, and we're continuing to have those conversations. Problem is, we don't have site control. We cannot even access the site right now for tours. And there's no way to get any kind of firm commitment from a developer that they're gonna do something there if we can't even show them the site.
So you can't even show them the site? You
No,
can't even bring
we
on
haven't done
property?
tours in about a year. The Department of Corrections, being the owner, is holding us back right now, unfortunately, because they've had their own, struggles with their strikes and then, the thousands of layoffs. The policy was always for us to put tour requests in through Empire State Development, but then they would, have to talk to the Department of Corrections, and we would always have to have an escort from the Department of Corrections when we were on the site. And obviously, they're short-staffed, so understandably, they're not doing that. But none of the state agencies have been open to considering alternatives to allow us access.
For 20 years, I was chairman of the Crime and Corrections Committee, and as a visitor, emphasize it, as a visitor, I've been in most of the prisons in the state. And I helped create Butler. It was, I was in the assembly, Senator Paul Kehoe was the leader of the effort, and I was certainly worked hard. I represented Butler in the assembly and the Senate. I've seen Butler, which has none of the problems that Willard has, in the sense that it's relatively new construction. They do have an infrastructure. It's closer to Syracuse than all the kinds of things that Willard said, but it is nowhere is in a location that is anywhere as dynamic as the Willard location, because of the lake, of course, but other things. And they've had a number of proposals, but none have, I wonder why none of them have gestated into something specific, because most of them were agriculture business related, and that is in an agricultural setting in Butler, town of Butler, which so it's interesting. Maybe there hasn't been enough.
Well, it's taken them a decade. Butler was closed in 2014.
I was still
They
around.
now have a company that is in the process of acquiring it, and they went through, they're working through their IDA to do that, but they've had folks interested over the years, and the state was always the stumbling block, because they would come up with these extensive RFPs that needed to be responded to and weren't willing to be nimble enough to account for the various developers who were interested at the time. And they let that place decay.
This is a big reason why you have legislators. Certainly was a big part of my job. It didn't require a vote in Albany. What it required is to have your team talk to those agency folks to bring them reality. They're immune from reality often, and that this is reality. I would ask we got a good legislative delegation in Seneca County. I would ask them to be engaged in this once you decide what you need.
Right.
And I'd be glad to work with you on those issues regarding Willard's redevelopment, and at least in terms of doing the marketing. I don't know, Tom, if you raise a profound question about public-private partnership.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting it at all. I just don't know how we can fashion it unless the state wants to continue to be a partner.
Well, yeah, if they're not gonna make up their mind, if they wanna give it up, let's do something with it with you. Let's work together.
Exactly.
And then if you wanna stay in, but if you don't want to, then let us go. But I don't see how anything moves unless, as a business owner, how do you go in and work on something when you don't know the ownership capabilities of that piece? If you really wanna sink your teeth into it. Once that,
Yeah, exactly.
once that is established, I think is what we've talked right from the beginning, is we gotta figure out who owns it so we can actually make the decisions and move forward. Because the wheels don't seem to turn only so far, like the Bruce's
Well,
point.
they're trying, and it's getting stuck.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the person behind the curtain that's saying, somebody's shaking their head saying, no, not yet, not
Yeah.
yet. We don't know, and we don't know who that is.
Jeff had
So-
a question.
Yeah, Senator, sorry I'm late. It's the pitfalls of having a small office. when you were in Albany, and I had the pleasure to serve for some of that time when you were there was a program called Power for Jobs. It was started in, I think, 97 or 98, shortly before I got to Albany. From all purposes, it was somewhat successful. I mean, it's still a version in existence right now, rebranded, I think, somewhat. You've heard already a challenge that was brought up with Seneca Meadows. Seneca Meadows continues to be a challenge cited by a lot of businesses in the area. One of the things that is pretty apparent is that footprint is going to stick around in some fashion or another for many, many years, whether or not there is an active company on that site or not. And it will continue to be producing nothing. And I am just wondering, part of what the IDA does is help encourage business and development and growth. And one of the ways that we do that is able to offer incentive programs to encourage those jobs and those programs. With Willard, with the county, do you ever envision a path forward that the methane produced by that facility could ever benefit the local community in a way that provides meaningful jobs, potentially for power for jobs, I mean, or benefit the community at large in a way that it's not right now? I understand there is a business there that's capitalizing on the methane, and they've got a business model that is in process, but it seems to me that otherwise challenge for development to at least the northern part of our community could be producing more for the community in terms of benefit, and potentially to benefit a program like Willard. If we had the ability to, now you had talked about your struggles with the solar, and I understand that, but I'm just curious, in your opinion, if that is at all something that would hold potential in your opinion in the future.
I agree with everything you said, Jeff. And yes, it does have potential. That potential was recognized, and I think one of my big disappointments was when the prior owners of Seneca Meadows sought an expansion. One of the things that we were celebrating was the fact that they would be developing acres of greenhouses. If you may remember that, Ralph. They were to develop acres of greenhouses on the east side of 414, south of where that methane is now being generated into electricity. Zuber, is that the person that owns it? I forget who owned the electricity.
Well, it's now owned by BP. Archaea Energy is
really, so he
it's
sold
a division
that.
of BP.
So yeah, big disappointment to me was that was supposed to happen. It was promised to happen, and it never did. Never came to be. It's certainly the answer to your question is yes, it should be. There's been nobody that's grabbed that by the horn. It's either been we hate you or we like you, and there's not much in the middle to really say, okay, well, let's do just what you're saying. I think it makes a lot of sense. They could expand that generating facility probably 2 or 3 times. Absolutely. At least. And you're right, that methane's there for a long, long time. So it's not going away. And I don't know how much of it's still being burned off or how much is being utilized, but I assume it's all going to the grid now. But yeah, again, those that are discussing those would be maybe something the chamber could float. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And it already was planned for it to happen. That was to be part of the reason that the expansion was going to provide more methane generated electricity, and the electricity was going to be used to fuel the greenhouses to develop hydroponic products. vegetables.
So they were also gonna inject the methane into the natural gas system so that the Seneca Falls schools would have no gas bills or no heating bills. Did that ever happen, or nobody knows? They haven't, since Kyle Black took over there, they haven't been very good at being proactive within the community. I mean, they give a ton of money to different organizations, but they don't get out there and tell people what they've done, and I think that's a big mistake. And it's just part of Kyle's background. I knew Kyle when he was a little kid. He worked for us on a farm. So he was not, to me, he was not the right person to be out there managing that facility or whatever he does. He's the face of it, but it's a
Well,
shame.
to the senator's point, the chamber has been looking at this.
Yeah.
I can tell you assuredly, it is beyond our pay grade. It's going to require many more entities than just the chamber looking at this. Maybe the IDA considers, the county considers, but from my vantage point, it would be, we would all be better served in Seneca County to lean more into a strength, which would be this deposit of methane gas, than focus on the constant negatives that are impacting our community.
It's even about, everybody says, well, they're gonna pollute the lakes. New York, at least this section of New York, is really unique within the earth. Water in New York flows to the north. There is not a chance in that place down below us, that most of us will probably wind up, that water is gonna go from the landfill back into Seneca Lake or Hugo Lake. That's just not gonna happen. It doesn't flow that way. Why doesn't Seneca Meadows get out and tell people that at some of these meetings? It's not possible. Water doesn't flow uphill. So,
It's, you always think that it
I
flows
know.
because you see
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It doesn't flow this
It
way,
won't.
it flows that way. Jeff, would you follow up on that? And see if there's any potential to do that expansion? Again, another part of the equation is transmission, but if we could enhance generation, that's part of the battle. Congratulations on your relocation to this building. Sir, I don't know how you negotiated that, but I'm really glad you're here. It's great to be, and let me brag a little more. I got the money for this building. It was something we got to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, where it was going to be was for many years their training center. Between Rochester and Syracuse, they were going to bring me, but the Zoom and Teams sort of destroyed the need for them to do so. And when the IDA took it over, I think that's just wonderful, and that you guys are here, and it gives a nice presence, place to meet and greet folks that might be interested in coming to bring jobs here. So thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss. I don't want to belabor my time any more than yours. Joan's got some brochures I'd like to just give to you, putting the website and of the Friends of the Veteran Cemetery. Please take a look when you get a chance. And thanks for the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
Thank you. Bruce, good to see you.
Thanks for your thoughts.
Likewise, look forward to working with you on that, sir. So nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you,
Thanks,
too.
man. Judge, be in touch on the land bank.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Mike. Good to see you. Good to see you. Kelly,
Mike?
nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Senator, always good to see you.
Likewise.
Right back, stay with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Got enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Next, Jeff, you're up.
Chamber update? Sure. Would like to reiterate, there is a really special business after-hours event next week at the Finger Lakes Regional Airport. It is I'm looking forward to it because it's a really great opportunity to showcase the economic development potential and what is currently existing there for that purpose for our community. Everyone here is certainly invited. There is no cost to it. It's from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock at Finger Lakes Regional Airport next Wednesday evening. I believe it's next Wednesday evening.
Yeah, it is.
The third Wednesday. Yes. So please mark that on your calendar if you are able to. I want to thank many of you. I know we're at our legislative luncheon that was held last week as well. Really great attendance. Heard a lot of the issues impacting our state, so thank you for that. A couple new things that the Chamber is launching. We just launched this week a membership of like a buy local program for local businesses. So we've had local businesses come together and bring us discounts, and we've turned it into a mobile application that you can go and use at your discretion at various businesses around our Chamber community. So we're excited about that. We're excited to launch a new program that we've just signed with the local radio team to feature various business entities. It's going to be like a spotlight on member businesses, business opportunities in the region. It's going to be just about every week. We're going to have a presence from now until the end of the year. So we're really, really excited about that. From a tourism standpoint, the Seneca County community, Seneca County, Seneca Falls, Tyre, Waterloo, all have signed on to the Underground Railroad Scenic Byway. I'm very pleased to report that. I think I reported that at the last meeting. Because we are pretty unique. Seneca County in its entirety is being included in this byway. Not every community that was originally intended for the 440-some mile trail was able to meet the deadlines. So we are moving forward with the communities that did commit to that in its entirety. The DOT is very supportive of this project, and they are supportive of rerouting the trail, if you will, to include those communities that actually did sign up. I'm sure the other ones will continue to work on it and be added at some point, but Seneca County is going to get, I believe, a benefit from our quick action on this. So I'm really, really excited to see that kick off in the first quarter of 2026. Continues to be very, very big, busy time for us in terms of our tourism promotional efforts. We are right in the heart of the tourism season, or about to be in the heart of the tourism season. Our numbers, I'm about to report tonight to the Seneca County Board of Supervisors, tourism is down, unfortunately, for this year. But what is up in a very significant fashion is repeat visitation to our community. And so while our overnight stays are not at all where I would like them to be or hope they can be, we're actually only off about 1.5% to 2%. But repeat visitation is certainly been improved in a significant way, and that's a lot of factors that go into that, one of which is specific targeted advertising on the tourism promotion agency's part to people that have been here before and getting back in front of their face. And quite honestly, when people come here, they realize what all of you realize, that this is a pretty fantastic place to be and recreate and do business with. So we are really excited about that particular number and hoping that with the weather and some other forces, the rest of the season continues to show an uptick in tourism.
Do you think that depression is the Canadians not coming across the border?
I mean, I'm sure it has an impact, Ben. I'm absolutely sure that it has an impact. We made a conscious decision back prior to the beginning of the year that we rerouted some of the funding that we were spending for Canadian traffic to other parts of New York State, specifically within a more of a driving destination distance. And I can assure you that that is part of also why that repeat visitation number is up. I think the Canadian traffic certainly has been impacted here in this particular part of New York State. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, but we're focusing on some of the maybe the lower hanging fruit around us that we can focus on, repeat visitation in areas like Buffalo to Rochester to Syracuse to Albany, Binghamton, even the Mid-Hudson and New York City area is what we're really focused on, and we're seeing definite traffic increases from those particular markets.
Great.
Anything else, Jeff? Questions for Jeff? Thank you. Ernie?
Well, I guess tonight we're in the infrastructure part. The occupancy tax thing is gonna be brought up tonight, voted on that, I believe. And budget amendments. And I think there's some other speakers that are gonna come on, and I'm not sure what they all are at this time, so. I think we got kind of a busy evening tonight.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Other business? Anyone?
No.
Any reason for an executive session? Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Any other appointment? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.